I'm sure you have all heard this before, but everybody who wants to speak needs to come up to the microphone because this is being televised. Otherwise, people will not hear you, and I'll have to repeat everything that happens. So if you have a comment, a question, or are making a motion, you need to come up to the front, please. If you have a question, all questions come through me. No talking back and forth because we'll be here all night and it's hot. And I will ask if there are any changes to the Finance Committee booklet. Yes, sir.
So we only got a few changes. Not on. There you go. Can you hear me now? All right. Only a few changes. Article 18, lines number 11, 12, and 13 should read as follows. I'll give you guys a second to find it. It's on page 14, red book. Speaking. Hello. All right. Your red town meeting booklet. Article 18, page 14. Line 11 should read 23,965. Line 12, 14,252. Line 13, 10,172 for a grand total of the department of 498089. The only other changes, Article 21. Oh, sorry, 465. Yeah. 465. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Article 21. That should be a majority vote, not a 2/3 vote. And finally, on Article 28, page 16, the Finance Committee recommendation was no recommendation instead of favorable recommendation. Article 28. And that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Andrew. We now have our state senator who would like to make a special recognition. Ann?
Thank you, Paul, and thank you everyone that comes out. As you know, town meetings, this is the purest form of democracy, and things are done by the people who show up, so thanks for showing up. And tonight I get an opportunity to recognize someone who has shown up year after year after year, and that's John DiPilato. John moved to Spencer, that's where my mind is tonight. John moved to Barre 31 years ago, John? 32 years ago? When did you first move to Barre? 86, 33 years ago. Almost 33 years ago. 32 years ago, John moved to Barre. When he moved here from Worcester, he really made this his home. And those of you who know that, he immediately got on committee after committee after committee. For 20 years, he served for sewer commissioner. And if you look outside and look at the beautiful work that's been done on the town common, the eighth wonder of the world, John. You are someone that we have an awful lot to thank for, and we've got so many people. I know Paul. We won't forget Paul on that as well. But John, tonight we just want to have an opportunity for both the Senate and the House to just thank you for your many years of service to the town of Barre. John, some of you may or may not know, has moved back. He's gone back to his roots onto Shrewsbury Street. So, but you know, John, you can take the man out of Barre, but you can't take Barre out of the man. So, John, if you want to come up, do a little something. If you please join me in giving a nice big round of applause to John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Cindy. And I guess there's one more thing I should point out. Someone reminded me, let's all turn our phones off. Thank you. So I will now read the opening of the warrant. Town of Barre Annual Town Meeting, warrant June 19, 2018, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Worcester, SS. To one of the constables in the town of Barre in the county of Worcester. Greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of the town of Barre qualified to vote in town elections and town affairs to meet at the Ruggles Lane School Auditorium, 105 Ruggles Lane, on Tuesday, the 19th day of June, 2018, at 6:30 p.m. Then and there to act on the following articles. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading. All in favor? Thank you. You are directed to serve this warrant by posting an attested copy thereof on the bulletin boards at the Ruggles Lane School, 105 Ruggles Lane, Barre Town Hall, 2 Exchange Street, Town Clerk's Office, 40 West Street, basement, Henry Woods Building, 40 West Street, first floor, Woods Memorial Library, 19 Pleasant Street, 50 Main Street, and Barre Senior Center, 557 South Barre Road. Hereof fail not and make due return of this warrant with your doings thereon to the town clerk at the time and place of said meeting as aforesaid, given under our hands this 4th day of June, 2018 AD. Matthew Urban, Charles R. Chase, and Greg O'Sullivan, constables, return to service, Worcester SS, pursuant to the within warrant on June 5th, 2018. I've notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Barre by posting up attested copies of the same on the bulletin boards at same locations as noted above. On date signed June 5, 2018, Gary Clark, Constable of Barre, returned to the Barre Town Clerk at 2 p.m. on the 5th day of June, 2018 AD. L&M Glidden, Town Clerk, Gary Clark, Town Constable. So we're going to Article 1. Article 1 has previously been completed. Does anybody have any questions? Matt? Article 2. Article 2 is to hear reports from the committees. Yes, Charlie. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to accept the reports of the Selectmen, School Committee, and any other department or committee with all annual reports with the exception of the Finance Committee.
Motion's made. Motion's made, seconded. Finance Committee. Favorable recommendation for the Finance Committee. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to accept any and all state highway assistance funds authorized by the state legislature and approved by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division under the so-called Chapter 90 Highway Assistance Program to be expended for the maintenance, repair, and construction of town roads in anticipation of reimbursement under the direction of the Board of Selectmen for work on roads located on the state aid primary system as approved by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division, and further to authorize the Treasurer Collector with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow money from time to time during the fiscal year 2018 up to the reimbursable amount for the period from July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2018 in anticipation of reimbursement of said highway assistance in conformity with the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 6A, or take any action in relation thereto.
I think we misread one of the year dates there.
To the microphone, please.
I think he read through June 30, 2018 instead of 2019, that's all. The motion's correct. I was just going to save time and say I'd move as read, but...
So moved. Thank you. With the amendment.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, my motion is to accept the article as read by the town moderator.
Motion made, seconded. Finance Committee. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. And remember, if you're making a motion when you're done, please bring it to the clerk. Don't take it back to your seat. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to authorize the treasurer-collector with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow money from time to time in anticipation of revenue for the 12-month period beginning July 1, 2018, in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 4, and to issue a note or notes as may be given for a period of less than 1 year in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 17, and to authorize the treasurer-collector to enter into compensation balance agreement or agreements for fiscal year 2019 pursuant to the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F, and taking the action in relation thereto.
I make a motion for the town to vote to approve Article 4.
Motion made and seconded. Finance Committee? Favorable recommendation from the Finance Committee. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Article 5, revolving funds. To see if the town will vote to authorize revolving funds for certain town departments pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E1/2, for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018, or taking the action in relation thereto. Does everybody have one of these booklets? Thank you, Mr. Chase.
Revolving funds for the library, Board of Health, electrical inspector, plumbing inspector, gas inspector, police department, council on aging, and town departments using permitting software pursuant to Mass General Law 40, Chapter 44, Section 53.5 for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, as printed in the Finance Committee booklet.
Motion's made, seconded. Finance Committee. Favorable recommendation from the Finance Committee. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds the sum of money to operate PEG access and cable expense, or take any action in relation thereto. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Make a motion to accept Article 6 as read by the moderator.
Motion's made, seconded. Finance Committee. Favorable recommendation from the... Yes?
Andrew, you have a number for it?
Is there an answer?
That account, my understanding of that account is it's built so that we can receive funds from the cable company and distribute from it and track that. So it's just creating the account to receive it, so the value itself is not determined at the time. It's just so we can actually have a proper accounting method for that purpose. We will, part of our agreement with Charter through our 10-year plan or something, I believe Josh Smith might be able to give more clarity on that, is to receive some funds from them to help us pay for the public access channel. And we need to create this account to receive it and then spend it out. So it's just developing the account for means and methods, not so much for a specific value.
Yes, follow up, please.
I would expect this motion to be a motion to create an account, not a motion to raise, appropriate, borrow, or transfer funds.
Greg, read the motion.
I move that the town vote to authorize a revolving fund for the PEG access pursuant to Mass General Law 44, Section 53F and 3/4 for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018.
So, motion is made and seconded because he withdrew his previous motion. And from now on, let's read the motions unless they're really long.
Agreed.
Finance Committee recommendation? Favorable? Any other? Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Moderator, what does PEG stand for? What does PEG stand for?
It's a shorthand for public, educational, and government. It's a small amount of money that's on everybody's cable bill that goes to the town, and the town then uses that money to do what that guy's doing in the back right now.
Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous, thank you. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to allow the Board of Assessors to appoint one of its members to a paid part-time position under their supervision as allowed by MGL Chapter 268A, Section 21A, or take any action in relation thereto. Mr. Cheney.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Assessors to appoint one of its members to a part-time position under their supervision as allowed by Mass General Laws, Chapters 268A, Section 21A.
Motion made and seconded, Finance Committee. I'm going to make you work. You're going to have to pay attention every time. Favorable recommendation from the Finance Committee. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Is there an opposition? Unanimous, thank you.
I'll try and talk
want you to
louder.
stand closer to the mic and yell like me.
And yell like you?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we all good with this motion, or should we repeat it? Robin, stand really close and yell.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Dave,
Okay.
repeat. Make the motion loudly.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town of Barre authorize the Board of Assessors to appoint one of its members to the part-time position under their supervision as allowed by Mass General Laws, Chapters 268A, Section 21A.
Motion's made and seconded. Finance Committee recommends favorably. Are there any questions, and can we hear? Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Article 8, Board of Assessors Property Valuations. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money to pay for costs associated with the assessor's tri-annual recertification of properties, special appraisal expenses, cyclical reinspection, and annual interim value adjustments, or take any action in relation thereto. Mr. Cheney.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate $20,000 for costs associated with the assessor's tri-annual recertification of properties. Raise and appropriate $1,500 for special appraisal expenses, and raise and appropriate $6,000 for cyclical reinspection costs, and raise and appropriate $7,700 annual interim value adjustments for the total of $35,200.
Motion is made and seconded. Finance Committee recommends favorably. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to amend the appropriations and source of funds for certain accounts for the fiscal year 2018 adopted at the June 2017 annual town meeting, or take any action in relation thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the appropriation for the fiscal year 2018 operating budget and sources of funds for certain accounts for the following line item. To transfer $27,646 from water enterprise retained earnings to water pumping expense account.
Is that it?
That's it.
That was boring. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Finance Committee, favorable recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous, thank you. Article 10, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money to pay for costs associated with fiscal year 18 police union contract and taking the action in relation thereto. Chief?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $12,000 from free cash to the fiscal year 2018 Police Department Salaries Account 001-0221-511-000.
Motion is made and seconded. Finance Committee recommends favorably. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Chief? Article 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money to the fiscal year 2018 snow removal overtime / part-time account, or taking the action in relation thereto. Jason?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $26,688 from free cash to the FY18 snow removal overtime part-time account.
Motion is made, seconded. Finance Committee recommends favorably on this motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money to the fiscal year 2018 snow removal expense account, or taking the action in relation thereto. Jason?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $116,772 from free cash to the FY18 snow removal expense account.
Motion made, seconded. Finance Committee recommends favorably on the motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Article 13, to see if the town will vote to amend the code of the town of Barre by inserting Part 1 bylaws as Chapter 64, a new section to read as follows. Shall the town prohibit the establishment of marijuana retailer storefront within the town of Barre as described in the state of Massachusetts draft regulations 935 CMR 500, adult use of marijuana, or taking the action in relation thereto. Doug?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend the Code of Barre by inserting in Part 1 bylaws as Chapter 64 a new section to read as follows. Prohibit the establishment of marijuana retailer storefront within the town of Barre as described in the state of Massachusetts draft regulations 935 CMR 500, adult use of marijuana.
Motion is made and seconded. Finance Committee. No recommendation from the Finance Committee. Yeah, if everybody received the handout? Okay. Do you not have one? Okay. Are there questions on the motion? Yes.
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion for a secret ballot on this article.
Vote. We don't need a third, but thank you for your enthusiasm. Motion made, seconded. It's non-debatable and should not be discussed. What we're doing now is simply taking a vote on whether or not we're going to have a secret ballot when we vote on the main motion. Does everybody understand that? All we're going to vote on when I ask for a vote right now is whether or not you want to have a secret ballot. Any questions on that? Okay. Yes means you want a secret ballot. No means you don't want one. You're welcome. Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor of a secret ballot, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. Please don't yell. Let's do this one more time with just your regular voices. Don't go anywhere, Doug. All those in favor of a secret ballot, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Will count. Counters. Where's my other counter?
Point of information.
Yes?
What percentage of the
Majority. Oh, I'm sorry, 10% of the registered voters. Dave, would you mind counting for me? I know you can count, you send me a bill. What? Mr. Cheney, can you count for me, please? Thank you. All those in favor, please, of a secret ballot, please stand. How many do we need? Find out how many people. Thank you, please be seated. Pete, if you're gonna vote, you have to sit. No, I didn't say bend over, I said sit. Everybody needs to be in the audience so they can properly count. All those opposed, please stand. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. I'm sorry, please be seated, and it passed overwhelmingly. Sam, do you have a point of order?
Yes, sir. Point of order. I believe the rule says 10% of the people in the hall. So the relationship between the people who stood up for one purpose or stood up for another purpose has no relationship on this particular regulation. It does read, if you look at it clearly or closely, it says It passes if 10% of the people in the hall approve.
That's not what it says, but I read it, but thank you, Sam.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, now we're back to voting. We're going to do a secret ballot on this, but we're back to having any questions on the motion that Doug made a long time ago. Does everybody know what the motion is? Yes, ma'am.
My question is, why you're still moderating? Isn't it a conflict of interest to have you moderating questions about marijuana?
If you'd like me to, I was only going to step down for the last 5, but if you'd like me to step down, I'm happy to do that. I don't have any interest in this particular one, but if you'd like me to do that, I'm happy to do that. You need more than one, so if you and some other people want me to step down, I'm happy to do that. Kathy, did you have a question?
No, I would just say yes, please step down, and they said, no appearance of conflict whatsoever before you and was represented.
So I will take nominations for temporary moderators. Yes.
I would like to nominate Josh Smith.
Are there any other nominations? She declined, thank you. All those in favor of Josh Smith, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Josh will need to come up and be sworn in. Thank you, Josh. If you don't mind, I'll just say I would love that. But the only thing I want to do at the end is nominate. Thank you for your patience. Joshua Smith has agreed to take over for the evening. He'll be great. You'll love him. So treat him respectfully.
Town council would like to make a statement. He's not a voter. He's not a citizen of the town of Barre, but he's our lawyer.
Can the people in the back hear me? That's good. This article and the next 2 articles may look vaguely familiar to you. If you can recall, marijuana has been an issue before the town and before the state. Back in 2016, there was a ballot question on the state election. And that was the initiative to allow marijuana in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The town voted on that, a vote of, I've got to find it here. Yeah, I'm going to find it eventually. And anyway, the town's vote was in favor. And the vote was, Come on, Jim, it's here someplace. Town's vote was yes, 1,668, no, 1,225. So over a majority of the town was in favor of that referendum that was on the ballot back in 2016. Not to be left without recourse, in the passage of that 2016 ballot question, it was determined that there'd be a creation of a Cannabis Control Commission, and they determined that those towns that voted negatively, in other words, did not have a majority, were going to be treated one way, and those towns like Barre that voted a majority were going to be treated a different way. So they gave those towns like Barre a second chance. So on your ballot question that was on your election this spring, you had, you'll all recall, obviously, you had 3 questions there. You had question 1, which is the one that you're actually voting on right now, and you had question 2 and question 3. Those you again voted in the affirmative, but the vote for the affirmative actually was a negative vote. If that doesn't defy logic, don't worry, this is Massachusetts. So the vote was to prohibit, yes, the total was 272, and the vote no to not prohibit was 242 on this particular question. You're going to have the same issue on the next article on the warrant and the next one after that. Those are the 3 questions that were on your ballot this spring during your election. This time, I think the language is clearer, and you'll be voting yes, you do want to prohibit, and no, you don't want to prohibit, if that clears it up.
Thank you, Town Council. So we are now to the point of discussion of the question. Is there any discussion of the question? Mr. Yagley.
Mr. Moderator, could we ask our Chief of Police for his recommendation or opinion on the subject of the next 3 questions?
Thank you. We'll start by saying that a vote yes or no doesn't change the fact that recreational marijuana remains legal in the Commonwealth. This doesn't change that. I favor banning all 3 of the next 3 articles, 13, 14, and 15, for very serious reasons. This is a beautiful town. I'm new to it. I've been here about, 2 years now. I've been to conferences put on by departments from Colorado, and despite what, or you may or may not have heard anything about what's going on in Colorado, but they put out these seminars to educate police departments around the country. Basically, it's destructive. The establishments don't bring business in, they drive businesses out. I would hate to see that happen. They basically create zones. You put in a retail establishment for marijuana, you put in what are we calling it? A social consumption establishment. And it just pushes away all of the other businesses, and the only things that exist within those areas are those types of establishments. This is a beautiful town with a beautiful common. There are beautiful neighborhoods. The agricultural appeal of this town is outstanding. Even where I came from in Connecticut, everybody knew about the races here. I would just hate to see that happen. And chief after chief after chief comes forward at these conferences, and they tell horror stories about how it's just decayed their downtown. So my stance on it is that I would ask that everybody vote to ban on all 3.
Is there any other discussion on the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Everyone has one of these green sheets, I'm sure, and as the attorney pointed out, a yes vote would ban marijuana retail sales in Barre, and I just want to make sure a no vote would allow retail sales within the town of Barre, just to clarify that. Thank you.
Kathy?
Just a small note, the fact that legally you have the right to smoke marijuana. Legally you have the right to grow plants from marijuana. That's already passed. Has nothing to do with the situation we're talking about now. You're adults. The concern that several of us have is the fact that we're talking about young people and their development, and they really don't mentally develop the front cortex until they're 21, 22 or such. And it can be a gateway drug to other drugs. We've already had a death in May, 2 days before Mother's Day. And to back it up and to give you just a bit more information for 1 minute, to give you a bit more, to give you a bit more information, I was reading an article that was in the Landmark, and it was on the town of Sterling, which is just 2 towns over, and it was from a judge who lived in that town, and he was retired, and he just commented on the fact that he felt it would not be good for the town to have the retail in his town because it doesn't have adverse effects for many of you, but for young people it can and does because of their development. And he just said it's a gateway drug. They end up in the court, and he's the judge looking at these kids, and he's just saying to you, please help these kids out. Please help your town out. We have a great town. Keep it that way. Thank you.
Yes.
Anything that a town does we should do a cost-benefit analysis for what the town decides to do. And the question I have is, at what cost to the town do we want these establishments to exist in our town, and what kind of cost would that be for us in terms of our values, in terms of our small town culture, in terms of the way we look at ourselves, and what benefit is there for us? I'm really curious if the people that propose this, to do this and to not ban this or want to have this here, what is the benefit both financially and socially for the town to have a pot shop on the common? I'd just like to know what the answer to that is. Thank you.
Does anyone in the audience have the answer to that question? Any other discussion? Yes.
Specifically to the retail storefront, this particular article, there's a lot of debate, a lot of articles coming from both sides. You have a lot of people where you can read up on it and they say it's been found it's not a gateway drug. They found that alcohol is a greater gateway drug than anything else. It's the first one that gets you in. It's the one that has alcohol has a more similar effect on the body as opioids than marijuana does. And therefore, it is also why subconsciously is more likely to be a greater gateway drug than marijuana. The part about the retail store being in this town or not, and the fact that it's legal in the state anyway, the only thing I can suggest in regards to the potential benefits or negatives, and even to the police department, is by having a store that might actually be allowed to exist in this town with proper zoning, which pretty much based on the original recommendation that you'll find in the booklet for a later article, would not allow it in the common. It's restricted, it can't be close to a church, it can't be close to schools and daycares that already exist. All of those things right there pretty much say it can't fit in the common. And it pretty much says it can't fit but maybe 5% of the entire town space. But what it does do is it introduces a company that comes in, host community agreement, security plan with the police department, open doors, working with the community. By law, they have to do this. So they are now more of a partner with the town than others that might go to another town, buy enough, come back, and then sell to everybody else that can't get out of town. And now you have a black market retail store that is harder for us to follow and understand the implications on the town and the younger folk, where I do understand the concerns about what you're saying of people under 21, but state law says you can't sell it to under 21, so I don't understand how a retail store is going to change that potential. That potential still exists. So financially, the benefit to the town is you can get significant tax on the sale of it. And we all know that we're about to run through a budget where everybody wishes we had more money. And you can't keep cutting your budget, because deferred maintenance means you end up with more costs later. The only way you can actually try to work with our budget and reduce your tax rate and your actual tax bills is by increasing revenues. One of those is through certain economic development initiatives. This happens to be one that may be a benefit to the town. So you would ask what might be the pros and cons, and I'm just trying to give you another perspective.
Anyone else? Any other discussion or questions? I see a hand in the back.
So we can all see I have a baby, and we're all concerned about what drugs
Could you please
might
step
do.
up to the microphone so everyone can hear you? Thank you.
Drugs might do to our town, and what marijuana might do to change our town. But we might also want to think about the revenue that it could bring in to the schools, because I don't know how many of you had kids in school that wanted to play sports, but it was too expensive, or they wanted to do some extracurricular activities, but they weren't able to because the school cut them, or it was too expensive for them to do it. So if you think about it, this could bring in some revenue for sports to be cheaper, or for them to bring in more teachers, or anything, really. And for someone who has a 2-month-old, and in 5 years I'll have, a child in Ruggles Lane, and hopefully a child going to Quabbin. But as of this time, I don't want my kids going to Quabbin, because some sports are too expensive, or there's some of the teachers I don't agree with. But this could be an opportunity for us to bring in more teachers, an opportunity for sports to be less expensive, and I think that's a good thing for us to look at. That's it.
Money seems to talk. We heard someone say that alcohol is worse than marijuana, yet we approve it. Cigarettes take many lives, yet we approve it. Why does the dollar always win?
Okay. Hang on. Meeker's hand was up first.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's a lot of questions about whether or not there's a benefit to having marijuana in the town. And my question is the amount of money that would come into the town worth the amount of effort and the amount of time that the police department would need to dedicate to this? Is it worth the loss of other revenue that we could have? We already have Stetson in our district, in our town. We already have the regional school district centered in our town. Our high school and our middle school students every day drive past that common or wherever else it could be. By putting it in this town, you're making it that much easier for the students to come in contact with it and to have access to it. That is why I'm asking for the town of Barre, not the whole state, not the whole world, but the town of Barre to consider the students that go to school here, who every day drive through this town, whether or not it is worth it for our students to have to be in contact with that, or whether or not we want to say, give us a buffer, give our school district a buffer, and make it that much harder for them to have it.
Hello? Just curious, does anybody in here think there's no marijuana in Barre? I've been in Barre my entire life. there's plenty of marijuana. There will be retail marijuana regardless of how you vote. So tonight, the vote isn't about about retail sales, it's about legal sales. It's about getting revenue from those sales, taking the sales out of the black market, making sure the marijuana that people voted to be able to get is regulated. Instead of going to a dealer that's selling to kids, which is what everybody's afraid of. No kids are going to be buying from these retail stores that we're getting revenue from. And marijuana is not a gateway drug. There's plenty of science that backs it up. They did science with mice. They put them in a cage with cocaine water. They did a lot of cocaine. They got them to stop doing cocaine by giving them a wheel, giving them other mice to play with. And I think what the mother spoke about as far as revenue, there was a lot of initiatives in town by people to actually have events. In the 90s, they tried to start a skate park. The town shut them down. That's a gateway drug. They're Rutland State Park right now, they're shutting out mountain bikers. The town of Barre should be standing with regional towns saying, we want outdoor recreation. Because that's how you stop these gateway drugs. It's not the drug, it's the lack of motivation and it's the lack of other alternatives. And I really think that it's sad for the town to be focusing on marijuana like it doesn't exist. It does exist. Do you want to have it in the shadow or do you want to have it regulated? And that's really what we're voting for. It's that. So, I think that a lot of this is getting way too convoluted about kids getting access and everything else. So retail sales or legal black market is the way that I see it. Thank you.
Just to pile on to this point, just so we beat it thoroughly to death, it's important to know that not everyone that votes in favor of the cannabis ordinance, bylaw, whatever you'd like to call it, is one that consumes it. I'm currently 31 years old, God willing, and I don't drink, I don't consume cannabis, don't have any plans to start, but it's the sort of thing, what do we learn from history? Did prohibition did that actually turn out okay? We already laughed plenty when Floyd just recently said, does anyone believe there's no cannabis here in Barre, really? Does anyone actually hold on to that to be truth? It's not true. The people here that want to open up any sort of retail establishment for cannabis already have to go through immense loopholes and regulation upon regulation to even begin to exist and have a license. Those people are not going to be sacrificing a license that costs tens of thousands of dollars just for the sake of selling it to kids down the street. That's not how they operate. We've already had a majority of people here vote in favor on question 4. And I think we should respect the will of the people enough. We should respect parents enough to educate them not to consume it if they don't want them to consume it. It will occur whether we like it or not, but it won't occur if we educate our students properly, educate our kids properly, and direct them at the parent level rather than at the legal level. Thank you.
I would like to speak about the retail. I know for a fact that it is much more expensive than if you go to the black market. So you will be paying more, or you could have someone do your drug dealing. And the thing is, they talk about medical marijuana. A doctor does not write a prescription for it. Your insurance doesn't pay for it, and you don't take a copay. And these establishments cost twice as much, from what I understand, that it would to go to a marijuana dealer. So that is just a point that I wanted to add on to what Floyd said. It's already here. Why do we want more? Why do we want it to cost more? Thank you.
Good evening again. This article is very straightforward. We're going to talk about banning sale in our town or not. We're not talking about black market. We're not talking about if it exists. We're not talking about if people can use marijuana. Those things are here. We understand that. It's a decision of what we want our town to do and where we want to step forward. We're talking every day about new business and new revenues to help our town. I am not personally convinced that this is a smart way to pursue revenue. I don't think there's any significant revenue in this for us. And I do think the detractions to draw other businesses will be quite severe. When we talk about recreation things, maybe bike riding, maybe more farm events like the Stevens Farm do, maybe other farm events could do that. If we become a town known for the place to buy your drugs, that may take away. So think very carefully about the simple question here. Do we want to be a place that's selling pot, or don't we? We're not taking it away from anyone that wants it. They can grow it, they can have it, they can buy it, they can have it delivered to them from another town. Do we want to have a shop in town, or don't we? That's what this question is. I don't want people talking about black market and talking about other things. It's nothing to do with any of that. It's a very simple, do we want sales in town? You heard the chief of police opinion, and he's talking about what he sees in reports from chiefs in other towns, what it's done to the societies in the town centers. That's all I want you to consider. I'm not going to give you any more opinion than that, but let's stick to what it is, please.
I would request that the police chief answer a question. With these other conferences that you've been to, has there been any discussion of an increase of police presence and need for it? And if so, would that increase of service be covered with the tax? Thank you.
The police chief could answer that question.
The answer is yes. There's an increase in the need for police services in these areas, coupled with an inability to hire the highest quality police officers to come to this town when they can go to a town that doesn't have that problem and take their educations there. I would like to, while I'm up here, say that when you open a bar in a town, it doesn't stop underage drinking. So I don't get the relationship opening a legal marijuana retail establishment stopping underage use of marijuana. I will say that if you're a heroin dealer or a cocaine dealer and there's 7 towns to choose from to set up and one is selling marijuana, where would you go to sell your illegal drugs?
Ms. Marshall.
Move the question, please.
There is a motion to move the question that would stop debate of the question. It's been seconded, so we now have to vote on it. There's no discussion of this. A yes vote is merely to go ahead and start voting on the main motion. A no vote will continue discussion of this question. Does everyone understand that? Simple majority. All those in favor of moving the question? We're moving the question. All those in favor of moving the question? Aye. All those opposed to moving the question? That's unanimous. So I guess we're ready to move to the question. This is a secret ballot. Are we doing the voting machine thing? We're doing the secret ballot differently. You're not going to walk up here with your little yes and no cards. Instead, you're going to go back to those little voting booths in the back. You're going to fill in a bubble like you do at town elections. And you're going to carry your bubble up here and stuff it in the ballot box, and this machine's going to count it. And even though it's going to take a little longer for all of the bubble filling, it's going to take a lot less time for the counting. So town clerk believes this is going to speed things up. Let's hope she's right. We're going to start with the last 2 rows.
Can I just?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, what we're going to do is I could get if everyone could just stay seated for a few minutes, I'd like to get my election workers in the back and up front. So if I could have Mary Ann Watson, Polly Hosrath, Judy Newton, and Lorraine Lino take your places. We're going to start with the back 2 rows on each side.
He's suggesting that people turn in their yes or no slip, just a slip, because otherwise they could go twice.
No, we're prepared for this.
She's got it?
I got it. I got this. So, Mary Ann, you're handing out ballots with Holly. Judy, did you tell her? You gotta open up the suitcase with the ballots. Where's Holly? Okay, so Holly's going to one side. Yeah, I will. Okay.
We are only voting on question 13.
Yep. So what we're going to do is Mary Ann Watson and Holly Hosrath are going to be in the back of the room. We're going to form two lines. Once you receive your ballot, you're going to go to the voting booths to either to the back left or right. In the booth, there'll be a pen in the booth. Use that pen to mark your ballot. It's a simple fill in yes or fill in no, just like an election. When you're done, you're going to walk down this outside aisles to the front here where Judy and Lorraine will have you insert your ballot into the machine, and your right hand will be stamped to show that you've deposited the ballot. You can go back up the center aisle and return to your seats. Again, this is only for Article 13, and you're just yes or no.
That's your first voter.
Yep, they're right hand. So, yeah.
2 hours ago. 2 hours ago, I took it.
Come on. Okay? Don't use your red pen. She's using her pen. You need. Make sure you're marking your ballots in the voting booth using the pen provided in the booth.
Right.
The next ballot will go much quicker. Push your vote in. Push your ballot in. Oh no. That's how it gets in. Don't pull it out. What does it say to them? Judy.
I think I wasted my vote.
You'll have a good idea when we see the results of it.
I already know them. Especially these people that we don't have a sports program, you know, swapping schools too.
Yeah, I know.
I went to a school that didn't have a hell of a lot of men. They had a lot of fun. We still get good.
Yep, just let me. We're getting back. Once everybody does it once, really, it'll go quick. come in. We are prepared for the Patriots slips if they want to try that for the next one.
Mine did too.
Push it in. And then they will have both ways and then you can see. I've been up since 4 o'clock. I think this will ultimately, people would have still had to have lined up and ripped off a slip, put it into the little slot here.
Well, the counting took a while in the cast, so that was done. And then you had to have 2 people count it, and you're not sure about it. So I think in general this feels better.
That's what I was going once everybody's done on the floor, I'll make an announcement for the select to go up and cast their ballot, and the finance committee to go up and cast their ballot if they haven't already done so. If you'd like to vote, or we can go up and vote. My election workers, if they want an opportunity to vote. We'll just make sure that everybody that wants to vote has had a chance to vote.
Do you know the number of people
Checked in? No, I don't. Where did Mary Ann just go?
We should definitely compare that to the number that
Yeah, okay. So I will go see what we have for number. Why don't I go get that now? Ask people to seating once you've voted to go back and be seated so we know.
Once you've completed voting, it would be great if you could return back to your seats. Thank you.
I'll pull up some chairs that I think will be good. Because Mason gives us, they get a lot of chairs. Dr. Mason, yeah, right. They don't have a lot of chairs. They have a lot of chairs. Yeah, okay.
She couldn't find Bubby's stand because of his tattoos.
That's right.
It's a big event.
Really?
It's a big event for the week.
So we don't need those little colored ballots, right?
No, they're giving us a voting bag.
I think I'll take
Right. Yeah, that's a concept.
That was awesome. How are we doing? How's your brother? By the way, that was very good.
I don't know if it was, but I thought it was clear.
Hey, you did a good job.
Oh, thank you.
The only thing is nobody
The
ever...
one thing I forgot about was the whole...
That was clear. I like the one with the bag.
Yeah? Just touch it.
Wow.
Babies and dogs and puppies.
We're going to do this 2 more times. Or 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah, you're right. It's okay. We'll get it down.
Hopefully the next one goes a lot quicker.
Huh?
Hopefully the next one goes a lot quicker now that we've had the big
we
debate.
know how to do it now. I like the idea of gets counted.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How was Montana? Everything was absolutely perfect. Oh, perfect. Perfect. That's great. Yeah, it was great.
So we'll find out pretty soon if we can start letting more bylaws out.
I think. That's my plan. I like the plan. Either that, or we should buy a tow behind mower. Hold on. That your VX in tow, but it offsets. That hurt my toe.
Yeah? Are yours fair?
But I'm usually in the pool by off. No, I'm usually in the pool by 6.
6 a.m.?
Wow. If it's either not tomorrow.
Exercises?
Yeah, I do 20 minutes.
That's impressive. I don't do that. I don't exercise that much now.
How's your system working?
I need to work on that.
You're not going to video my technique for the Olympics, believe me. And when I'm out of breath, I
You'll
stop.
never see me up there at 6 a.m., I promise.
For the lifeguard I had in 5th and 6th grade. So every time I get down to the deep end, I'm thinking, did I give her an A or a D in that Egyptian report?
Me either. Would you like to make a statement?
Yes. I'm gonna go. This will be interesting. It's gonna be a long night.
Make this the school budget voted quick and then leave.
I can do this all.
They're counting the second list now. There's 126 that we checked into precinct 1, and I'm waiting for the count.
No, I think it's precinct 2. Whenever there's precinct 1, all the way up. Precinct 2. That's how many people voted on the secret
This will give you a count. Problem about going in.
Today, of all the voting machines and technology, this is the best one. There's just a stack of paper in there, and the other thing with everything is all digital and receipts, it's terrible. It's a terrible idea. Counting paper ballots makes no sense. That's not good. But even they're relying on physical security of the machine. I guarantee that this is just somebody really wanted to get in there. They got to train it out.
I was it just told us that the shrine super go back find it down where
The kinds of sites in Heritage, they stopped because they decided that wasn't consistent with free speech. So they went back to being open, but I think that whole phase of trying to litigate that and use that as a revenue source, when it played out and people found out what they were really was paid $5,000 to sell it, and enough people called their bluff that it just stopped being it. And then that was about 1 month. And then it went on because that was about downloads. Nobody does that. People watch it. They stream it. They went to streaming.
We're going to stay for the next two.
And so the
that could last as long as streaming last as long as
yeah, I can use some of this. Let's walk on that.
the NCA kicks in, and they basically just take them. The person who's receiving it, they send a takedown notice to the person serving that content. No, like the YouTube. Yeah, they send it to YouTube. Send it to YouTube saying, that's copyright. So the blame is in the right spot. Now YouTube takes it, and but the problem is the way that it works. Somebody else, YouTube, anybody can still do it. Somebody else uploads it they like. So now it's available. They took down more things, it's available. So it becomes economically inviable for them to actually find copyright. So they just let it go. So the entire image is just blank. Yeah. They don't make that sound. They've switched into highly customized. So a rich individual pays to have a movie made for himself. That's a one to nope, to yeah. Entertainment. That's a more lucrative business.
Thanks, you too.
It's everywhere.
So marketplace sometimes
Marketplace does marketplace, right? Someone told me that, I don't know.
I know what the next two votes are.
All right. I know how to phrase that. I will remind them that it's not really required. And I will also, I'm going to do a quick question. The assembled mass, whether they like it. I think it might be, but maybe they like it. So I'll just, before we do that, that's what I'm saying. That's true. But the other system, I mean, you know, Somebody really doesn't believe they can afford to walk down themselves.
Well, you got discretion to the mail market, and you then use vote, those 7 people challenging. You know that?
Yeah.
It's, you can declare a vote unless there's 7 or more people challenge your vote.
7?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good. Thank you so much.
And one jerk in the back.
Gates on the
Yeah.
But I'll let the fire chief know.
That's what I figured I'd say is that if anybody has a health issue that requires that they have water, that they have some.
Okay, that's a good way. Okay.
So you're still in that company?
Same place. How many years? 20. Just past 22 years.
You look very professorial. You haven't seen him in a while. And he stood up and said, "Holy cow, looks like a professor smile." See? Thanks, you too.
We're almost done, folks. If everyone could find your way to your seats as quickly as possible.
It's the best ever. I won't steal your money. I'm going to steal my water now. How's it going up there?
It's going just.
At least you got the bridge.
Yeah, you know, it's actually nice.
It's better than
It has its perks.
Honest to God. Too funny. All right, so
What do you think?
Hopefully
Oh, the person who moved it isn't going to move it.
Good. Nice to see you.
That could have been worse. Thank you so much. I didn't even see who it was.
We're about to tally the machine. Anyone who hasn't voted, election workers, finance committee, board of selectmen, anyone forget to vote? They did.
Do you want to vote?
No.
There's 127 checked in precinct 1 and 108 in precinct 2. So 235
Okay.
is what we have checked in.
Okay. And what's the total on the machine?
Right?
We made it. Good.
So just for reference, there are 235 registered voters in the room. According to the machine, 226 ballots were cast. So that's good. It's not a bigger number than the number of voters.
Yes. What's your Oh, for sure.
Done. All right. Now, order.
There were 0 blind ballots, 110 yes votes, 116 no votes. The motion was defeated. Before we move on to Article 14, a couple of housekeeping items. First, I'd like to remind everyone that we don't have to do secret ballots. Just saying. This new system that we used, that was an interesting experiment. I want to get a sense of the room as to whether that new system is better or the old system of the yes and no pieces of paper is better. Remember, at the end of the yes and no pieces of paper, you got to wait a while the town clerk and her people do some counting. So just a quick show of hands, who liked what we just did better? Put your hands down. And who likes the old system better? Well, you people are no help at all. Let's hope we don't have to do either of those things. We're moving on to Article 14. Sam, do you have a point of order? If you have a point of order, you may step to the microphone and make it.
Can you explain the vote?
Is the microphone turned on? There'd be a switch on top of the microphone. Yeah.
Can you explain the vote? Didn't you just say an affirmative vote was 110 and a negative vote was 116?
That's correct.
Well, according to this, it says a no vote would allow marijuana. So could you
That's
clarify
correct.
this?
That's correct.
Could you clarify?
That, oh. Who moved Article 13? Who made the motion on Article 13? Did you turn it into the town clerk sign? Did you have Matt? Sam can refer to the green sheet. If you're confused as to what just happened on Article 13, it was no. You can refer to the green sheet, and that clearly explains what no means on Article 13. We're moving on to Article 14 now. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to amend the code of the town of Barre by inserting in Part 1 bylaws as Chapter 65 a new section to read as follows. Shall the town prohibit the establishment of marijuana retailer delivery only within the town of Barre as described in the state of Massachusetts draft regulations 935 CMR 500, adult use of marijuana, or take any action relative thereto. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town will vote to amend the code of the town of Barre by inserting in Part 1 bylaws as Chapter 65 a new section to read as follows. Prohibit the establishment of marijuana retailer delivery only within the town of Barre as described in the state of Massachusetts draft regulations 935 CMR 500, adult use of marijuana.
Do I have a second? A second. Is there any discussion of Article 14? Yes, Kathy. Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded to do that again. We're going to have a vote to decide if we're going to do paper ballots again. All of those in favor of having paper ballots, say aye. All of those opposed to paper ballots, say nay. Nay. I've determined that that does not meet the 10% threshold. We will not have paper ballots on this question. Is there any discussion of the motion? Yeah.
Right, just to be clear on this one, it does not stop the outside retail delivery. So somebody from Gardner can deliver into Barre. This strictly says that we cannot have an operation operating in Barre distributing. So just so people are clear on that, the Cannabis Control Commission was very clear that you are not allowed to prohibit the transfer of marijuana through a town or to a town. So you're not banning delivery, we're just banning it from Barre.
Anyone else? Do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hi, I just want to add real quick. I think that this prohibition would unfairly treat those with disabilities, mobility issues, elderly who might need marijuana to lead a good life. Thanks.
Any other discussion on Article 14?
Is that all right?
You need to step up to the microphone.
Is that okay?
I think it's all right. Before we do that, they just turned on a fan here, which feels really nice for me. Is the noise a problem for anyone in the audience? Okay, we're fine.
No, I just had a question. So if you're limiting delivery into Barre, medical marijuana is also affected?
Can someone answer that question? The question was, are we limiting delivery of marijuana into Barre, And does that affect the use of medical marijuana? Can someone answer that question?
From what I understand from the regs, that is not limiting sales into Barre. It is strictly limiting a business from operating out of Barre. So a business operating out of Gardner can drive into Barre, deliver, medical or recreational marijuana. It is not stopping the transportation to Barre, through Barre, any other degree. It is only stopping a business from operating out of Barre. Is that clear? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Yeah, step up to the microphone, please.
To the point by the previous person.
Can you get closer to the
that,
microphone, please?
This does not apply to medical marijuana at all. That's a totally separate issue.
Any other discussion? Yes?
So I'll just go strict regulations on this. A marijuana establishment is defined in 935 CMR. It does include registered marijuana dispensaries, which is medical marijuana. So the way this is written, if it prohibits the delivery, according to the definition, a marijuana establishment does include medical. That's just the regs.
Maureen?
Just clarification, if we already said in the town that we can have a marijuana retailer storefront, and then it says here, marijuana retailer delivery only, doesn't the fact that we already have a retail storefront? No, okay, help me. I'm fine with me.
Dean.
So going back to the current regs that the CCC has adopted. So going back to the current regulations that the CCC has adopted, the retail delivery license is a separate category of license. Back when the DPH had it, it was a completely vertical license, so you get that one license, you can deliver, cultivate, process. This is a separate license that some entrepreneur could apply for, be approved for, and then create a business. And it's pretty strictly regulated. Delivering around, sure. And they'll be able to go to Worcester, a dispensary there, or anywhere, and take the product and deliver it.
Okay.
Any other discussion of this question? Does everyone understand the yes and no on this one? It's just like the last one. You have that green sheet with an explanation. If you vote yes, that means you don't want delivery operations happening from storefronts in Barre. If you vote no, that means you're okay with those operations happening under whatever regulation the town may later approve deeper and deeper into this town meeting. So, no further discussion? Yes?
I think to be a little more specific on delivery and how the state is issuing licenses, it's more like issuing a license to a logistics facility, someone that will go pick up and bring somewhere else, but they do not necessarily have to have their own storefront to do it. So what this is saying is, if you prohibit it, you're saying you cannot have a company that will have the vehicles or the transportation or the licensing within Barre deliver within or anywhere around the state, and that's all you're saying. But any other company in any other town that has a delivery service can bring it right to Barre, and you still have whatever negatives, but you'll have absolutely no potential positive from it.
All of those in favor of Article 14, please say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? No. The article is defeated. Article 15. to see if the town will vote to amend the code of the town of Barre by inserting Part 1 bylaws as Chapter 26, a new section to read as follows. Shall the town prohibit the establishment of marijuana retailer, marijuana social consumption establishment within the town of Barre, as described in the state of Massachusetts Draft Regulations 935 CMR 500, adult use of marijuana, or take any other action relative thereto? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town will vote to amend the code of the town of Barre by inserting in Part 1 bylaws as Chapter 66 a new section to read as follows. Shall the town prohibit the establishment of marijuana retailer, marijuana social consumption establishment within the town of Barre as described in the state of Massachusetts Draft Regulations 935 CMR 500, adult use of marijuana.
I have a second. Is there any discussion of Article 15? Since none of us have read well, at least I haven't read 935 CMR 500, I would certainly appreciate if someone could tell us what a social consumption establishment is.
This seeks to prohibit a facility that has a marijuana license in the town where you can have on-site consumption in the facility. So it could be combined with a retail establishment or it could be separate from that, but it would allow marijuana consumption on that facility.
Please direct your questions.
That's right.
Thank you. Can you repeat what she just said? Because I think it's a great analogy.
It's like a bar. You can go in and have a drink there. You can go into one of these establishments that allow social consumption on site, and you can consume marijuana products there.
Thank you. Meeker.
Sorry, I have to make a correction. There was an error on here. It said the motion was to insert a new section to read as follows. It said, shall the town prohibit? It should say just prohibit.
Okay, Nika.
One of the big concerns with this having on-site consumptions is due to the fact that in the state of Massachusetts and anywhere else in the country, there is absolutely no way for the police department to be able to determine whether or not somebody is under the influence of marijuana and they are driving a vehicle. If you are going to a site to then use a substance, and there's no way for our police department to be able to verify whether or not you are impaired, that is then going to be legally acceptable within the court of law. If you are in an accident with somebody who is impaired, there is no way for the police department to be able to prove that that person was impaired. So until there is a way for our police department or for any police department in the country to be able to verify that there is indeed impairment, this is a really dangerous option. And that's part of why the state of Massachusetts currently does not have regulations on the books yet for this type of consumption. There is no regulations currently on the books in terms of having on-site consumption because they haven't yet determined how that's even possible. So that's our big concern.
If an establishment allowed smoking in it, if it's in a business block or a close neighbor, how are you going to prevent all that stench from going into the business or the house next door and affecting people who don't want to experience that? There's no way to keep the vapors from escaping unless there's some kind of air control. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Yes.
I just personally would support this particular prohibition. I do not believe the town or the state is actually prepared for social consumption sites, nor do I think we can actually properly, as Nika brought up, we can't enforce any laws because we don't have the proper testing in place to be able to prove when you are actually at a certain level that makes a difference.
Yes.
I want to reiterate what Mr. Urbig just said, and also let you know that we do have Chapter 63, Section 1 of the town ordinance that does ban the smoking of marijuana in streets, cars, public ways, and public buildings and things. So the only way this could even be allowable was if it was made a private club. So it is banned in our books, and we have to probably need more bylaw changes even if we tried to pass it. But I don't think it's a smart thing to do.
So again, a yes vote on this article will ban those kinds of places, and a no vote means that you think they're okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. Did you turn in the motion to the town clerk? If anyone here has a medical issue that requires that they get some water, we do have a little bit in the back. We don't have water for everybody, but if you really, really need it, we do have some. We're moving on to Article 16, the omnibus budget. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds such sum as may be deemed necessary to pay town charges and expenses for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018, and vote to fix salary and compensation of all elected officials of the town in accordance with the provisions of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 108, effective July 1st, 2018, and make all appropriations for same or take any other action relative thereto. Article 16 begins on page 7. That's what it says, but it really begins on page 8. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $821,947 to pay the cost of general government as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Yes.
Why did public safety building go from 11,650 to 48,000?
The number that was put into the budget for last fiscal year was a guess as to what the actual costs were going to be after running the building for 6 months. We now have a clearer understanding of what the budget numbers are going to be to actually run that building.
Yes.
Follow-up, can you give me an idea of exactly what the $48,000 will pay for?
Those costs include $500 for custodian supplies, $28,000 for electric. That was the largest increase. $2,500 for fuel, $1,500 for repairs and maintenance, $500 for the security alarm system, $250 for the fire extinguisher, fire escape, and maintenance, $1,500 for snow removal, $7,000 for fiber optic internet service, $5,100 for the annual telephone system, and $1,150 for carpet cleaning services.
Any other questions on the motion? Yes. Or not?
Yes, can we find out why the police overtime went from $0 to $109,000?
We're doing general government, so let's hold that question until we get to those line items. Okay? Is that all right with you? Thank you. Any other? Yes.
Mr. Moderator, I'm wondering if the elected moderator is planning on sharing his stipend with you.
He can have it. But I do have a follow-up. $28,000 sounds like a lot of money for electric.
For what?
Electric.
Would you like an answer?
It is electric heat in that building for the ductless system. So, yeah.
Yes.
Are there any capital expenditures involved in this budget up to $48,000? You had mentioned a phone system. Is that a one-time thing or is that an annual expense?
That was for telephone system. That's for annual maintenance of the current. Yes.
Any other discussion? All in favor of that motion, which is just lines 1 through 46? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Moving on, the motion carries. Moving on. Do I have a motion on the police department?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $759,242 to pay for the cost of police as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? We're talking about lines 47 through 61 of the booklet. There was an earlier question about police overtime. Perhaps the chief could address that.
If you look to the salaries, you'll see we pulled it out of there and put it into its own line. There are a lot of contractually guaranteed rates that were never put into the budget. There are obligations that we have to pay, so we've broken it down. So that came out and it's put somewhere else. We're trying to meet all the obligations of the contract.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Do I have a motion on dispatch? No. Chief, are you making the motion on dispatch?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $149,290 to pay the cost of dispatch as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of this line item? All those in favor? Oh, wait, sorry. You have a discussion question?
I have a question for maybe it's the financial committee. Have we experienced any savings since we've gone to the regional dispatch system?
Does anybody know the answer to that question, either the chief or the finance committee, as to how our expenses on dispatch have changed since we regionalized?
Just looking for a general sense. I don't need the down to penny. It's gone down a little?
The response is that it's gone down a little.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion on ambulance?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $476,636 and to transfer $10,000 from the Braintree receipts for EMS services for a total of $486,636 to pay the cost of the ambulance as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
Is there any discussion of this motion?
I just wanted to note to you folks, before we vote on this budget and the next, which is the fire department, a few years back, we had looked into combining the two departments. It's done throughout most of the state, and we eventually got into that process. Chief Rogowski took over as the chief, and he had his hands full. It was a very difficult task to join those two departments, which are very important to our residents of our town. And I have to say, we've gone through with the budgets and stuff, that he has done an outstanding job of combining these two departments and to make a plus on the ambulance part. Not only the benefit to the towns with the money that we have to spend, but also a benefit to you folks for the service that you receive. So I hope we all can support him in his needs. Thanks.
Any other discussion on we're talking about line items 63 through 70 of the booklet? Any other discussion? Yeah? Please step over the microphone. Yeah, sorry.
I just have a question on the motion. Where is the money coming from? Was it raise and appropriate, or is some of it coming out of the ambulance fund? Receipts reserved for appropriation?
The answer to that question is $400,000 of that is coming out of the EMS receipts. That's every year when we go on an ambulance call, we bill for the ambulance call. That money is collected and it's used to supplement the budget. This year, by the end of this month, it'll be about $400,000.
Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Fire department motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $246,408 to pay the cost of fire as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
We have a motion and a second. It's really hard for me to tell you what lines we're doing because the lines aren't numbered in order, but they're in the block called fire department.
68 to 75.
68 to 75 is alleged. Is there any discussion of this item? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Animal control.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate $17,593 to pay the cost of animal control as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Yes.
Could somebody explain the jump in the cost for animal control?
Barre is part of a regional group organization that manages our animal control services, and we had an increase in the assessment from them. Hopefully it's going to provide an improvement in service as we go into the next fiscal year as well.
Everyone hear that answer? Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Civil defense? Who's making civil defense? Mhm. Yeah, no, I understand. Sorry, folks, there's some confusion about the ambulance motion, whether it had the correct words in it. They're going to try and figure that out. And while they're trying to figure that out, maybe somebody can figure out who's supposed to be making the civil defense motion. Yeah, we can do that. Do you want to change the wording of it? Do you figure out your wording, and we'll come back to it, okay? Do we have civil defense yet? Yeah. Yeah, they need to write it down right, correctly. We're going to come back to ambulance. If I don't have a motion on civil defense, it's not going to happen.
I have some.
Oh, you have it. Of course you do.
You just stand right here, do you mind?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $1,000 to pay the cost of emergency management as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Yes. Can you come over with this?
The emergency management was the previous civil defense. They've changed the name to emergency management. That money is used to supplement the town with emergency preparedness items such as shelter items. Quabbin High School is a shelter. Some of that funds were used to purchase shelter equipment that we used during the ice storm, generators, chainsaws, equipment that the town may need in the event of a natural disaster or emergency. We used it to supplement some maps for the police department this year and some various rescue equipment over the course of the year.
Moving on to the building department. Wait, we haven't had a vote yet. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Now we'll move on to the building department.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote and raise and appropriate $97,854 to pay the cost of the building department. Raise and appropriate $22,180 to pay the costs of the land use for a total of $120,034 as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
I have a motion and a second. We're talking about lines 73 through 82 of the booklet on page 10. Is there any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Public Works.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $677,057 to pay the cost of DPW administration, town roads, and snow removal. Raise and appropriate $43,240 to pay for the cost of parks and commons. Raise and appropriate $30,000 to pay for the cost of streetlights. Raise and appropriate $16,097 to pay the cost of cemetery. Raise and appropriate $5,000 to pay the cost of tree warden, for a total of $771,394, as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
We have a motion and a second. We're talking about lines 83 through 102 on page 11 of the booklet. Are there any questions? Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Culture and Recreation.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $6,000 to pay the costs of recreation, raise and appropriate $2,500 to pay the costs of the Youth Commission, raise and appropriate $1,203 to pay the costs of the Historical Commission, raise and appropriate $2,100 for holiday decorations, raise and appropriate $500 to pay the costs of the South Barre Common Committee, raise and appropriate $218,942 to pay the costs of the library, for a total of $231,245, as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
I have a motion and a second. We're talking about lines 103 through 114 of the budget. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Health and Human Services.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $98,985 to pay for the cost of veteran benefits, to raise and appropriate $42,741 to pay for the cost of the Board of Health, and to raise and appropriate $67,637 to pay for the cost of the Council of Aging, for a total of $209,363 as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
I have a motion and a second. We're talking about lines 115 through 129 on page 12 of the budget. Any questions or discussion on those lines? All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Insurance and benefits.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $784,108 to pay the cost of the insurance and benefits as shown in Finance Committee booklet.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? This is lines 130 through 132. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
I believe we have to vote to rescind.
Yeah, I know what we need to do. We'll do that at the end.
I'm all set.
Debt service. Debt service? Do we have a motion on debt service? Our creditors might get upset if we don't have a motion on debt service. Debt service.
133.
Here we go.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate $437,479, transfer $125,000 from sewer retained earnings, transfer $31,404 from water retained earnings, for a total of $593,883 to pay the cost of maturing debt and interest as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any, we're talking now about lines 133 through 152 on page 13. Are there any questions? Yes. I can't hear what you said, so. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation favorable on every one of these sub-articles? Yes, they do. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Central purchasing.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $76,000 to pay the cost of central purchasing as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
We have a motion and a second. This is lines 153, 154. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Reserve.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate $10,000 to pay the cost of the reserve fund as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Schools.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $321,333 to pay the cost of Montechusett Technical School as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
We have a motion and a second. This is line 156, just line 156. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Someone have line 157?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $5,525,660 to pay the cost of the Quabbin Regional School District as shown in the Finance Committee booklet. And secondly, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $51,000 to pay the costs of the Quabbin Regional High School debt service, also as shown in the Finance Committee booklet. Excuse me, here's my motion from the...
You can't make two motions, so you can move one thing. Do you want to try that again? Let's forget that what she just said, start over.
I believe I misread. The move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $51,020 to pay the cost of the Quabbin Regional High School debt service as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
So we're skipping ahead to line 158. That's fine.
Actually, I read both line.
Yeah, but you phrased them both as motions, and we can't have more than one motion on the floor. So we're going to vote on line 158, and we'll come back to 157 in a moment.
Okay.
Are there any questions about line 158? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is unanimous. Now we can go 157.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $5,525,660 to pay the costs of the Quabbin Regional School District as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
It's moved and seconded. Now we're going back up to line 157. Are there any questions about the school budget? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. We're not quite done. We're going to back up to line 63 through 70, which is the ambulance line. I will entertain a motion to rescind the previous motion about the ambulance. I have a motion and a second to rescind the previous motion. Does everyone understand what we're doing? They said it wrong, we have to back out of it, we're erasing it. All those in favor of rescinding that motion? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? You're free to make a new motion.
All right, this one's written correctly, I promise you. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $400,000 from the ambulance receipt reserve account and to transfer $10,000 from the Braintree receipts for EMS services and to raise and appropriate $76,636 for a total of $486,636 to pay the cost of the ambulance as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Everyone understands what just happened? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. We're moving on to Article 17. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from sewer receipts a sum of money for the operation and maintenance of the municipal sewer system for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $653,116 from anticipated sewer receipts for the operation and maintenance of the municipal sewer system as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Yes.
I can speak loudly. Jason, tell me just why the sewer department's salaries.
No, I need you to walk over to the microphone.
Just curious as to why the salaries had an 8% increase. Thank you.
We like our guys a lot. Yeah, I can just tell them step increase. That's due to step increases for different salaries and also the 2% that the union negotiated with the town.
Any other discussion on Article 17? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 18, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from water receipts a sum of money for the operation and maintenance of the municipal water system for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $498,089 from anticipated water receipts for the operation and maintenance of the municipal water department as shown in the Finance Committee booklet.
We have a motion and a second. Can I ask you to repeat the number that you just said?
That was one of the corrections that he stated at the beginning of the meeting. The number is 498,089.
Is there any discussion of that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 19. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the purpose of paying for the GASB 45 audit or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $5,000 from free cash to pay for the GASB 45 audit.
We have a motion and a second. Finance Committee? The Finance Committee is favorable. Any discussion?
What is GSB?
The question is what the GASB audit is.
So GASB 45 is a governmental accounting standards board requirement that requires us to audit our post-employment benefits annually.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 20. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the purpose of paying for the OPEB, other post-employment benefits, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $5,000 from free cash to pay for OPEB, other post-employment benefits.
I have a motion and a second. Finance Committee is favorable. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 21, Police Cruiser. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow or transfer from available funds a sum of money to pay for a new police cruiser, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $50,000 from free cash to pay for a new police cruiser.
We have a motion and a second. Finance Committee. The booklet says this is a 2/3 vote, and that sounds wrong, right? It's just a majority, yeah. So this only requires a majority vote, does not require a 2/3 vote because we're not borrowing the money. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Felton Field improvements. Article 22. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the purpose of improvements at Felton Field or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $15,000 from free cash to pay for improvements to be made at Felton Field.
We have a motion and a second. The Finance Committee is favorable. Any discussion? Yes, sir. At the microphone, please.
What are the improvements?
What are we improving?
At first, we're going to be cutting down the decayed and rotting trees along Colebrook Road. They're becoming a danger. And we would like to replace it with a 3-rail wooden fence. And eventually, some arborvitae trees to replace the trees that we're taking down.
Any other questions? All of those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 23, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money for Wachusett Greenways Trail Fund, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator,
I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $1,000 from free cash for Wachusett Greenways Trail Fund.
I have a motion and a second. The Finance Committee is favorable. Any discussion? All those in favor, there is discussion.
Can we get an explanation, please, as to what this $1,000 is providing?
The question is for an explanation of what the money is for.
The $1,000 is used for annual maintenance of the Mass Central Rail Trail, and most often the town contributions contribute to the portable restrooms. This is for the Mass Central Rail Trail between Barre and Sterling along a 30-mile route, of which we have completed 20 miles, including 10 bridges and 2 tunnels, and a nod to Dr. Yaglu, sorry, had to say that. Truly, or Mr. Ed, or however you shall name him. But what it does in addition to that $1,000 actually paying for portable restrooms or in some cases tool repair equipment, it leverages thousands of hours of volunteer time to cut down dead trees, to maintain trails, to mow shoulders, to write grants, to have free outdoor events, and to provide what in each town is always named as #1 when they have an open space plan, an open space and recreation committee is always walking or ambulating in some other manner, bicycling, cross-country skiing. It's some form of getting out that applies to all ages, whether you're carried in a pack or pushed in a chair or limping along after your knee gives out, or whatever it is, it gets people out there and gives them an opportunity to enjoy their community and the absolute beauty of a town like Barre or any of the other Wachusett towns.
Thank you. It's been brought to my attention that the person making the motion is not a Barre resident. Is that a problem with anybody in the audience? We can do that with your consent. Okay, I'm taking your consent on that. Any other discussion of the question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 24, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money to purchase town voting machines and polling pads, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $32,550 from free cash to purchase voting machines and poll pads.
We have a motion and a second. Finance Committee approves. Is there any questions on this item? Yes.
Forgive me for the simple question. Are these purely electronic voting machines or are these manual paper machines?
They would be electronic.
The question is, what kind of voting machines are they?
They are electronic voting machines, which will be replacing these AccuVote machines that we currently use for regular voting. The reason why we have to replace these are the state is no longer certifying these. So we're going to, and as of right now, there are only 2 machines that are certified for Massachusetts. So they'll be no longer making parts or anything for this.
Can I follow up to my question?
Absolutely.
Is the entire state going to be switching to electronic voting machines then? Is the entire state going to be following through and switching over entirely to electronic voting machines?
Every community that has the AccuVote and the Optech Eagle, which are no longer certified, will be purchasing new voting equipment, yes.
Understood, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. I believe we're on Article 25. To see see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money to purchase an all-season dump body or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $60,000 from free cash to purchase an all-season dump body for the highway department.
We have a motion and a second. The Finance Committee is split on this one. Any discussion? Maybe from the Finance Committee about why they're split?
We need the dump body. What it is the one truck that we have the use of as an actual dump truck in the wintertime that can also be a sander without switching the whole body over. The one that was spec'd and put on the truck originally never worked correctly from the day one when they put it on in 2002. We've been limping along this long, but now it's just beyond repair.
Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Can we hear from the Finance Committee?
It's a good question, Mr. Grizzly.
The way it was worded was that it was a maximum of 60,000 as opposed to speccing out a particular unit. And some people agreed with that and some didn't.
The 60,000 came from a body that we would like to purchase that's all stainless steel, never have to worry about rotting out. It is on the state bid list. If it's not on the state bid list, we have to go out to bid, but the 60,000 is the quote that we received for the body.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 26, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds the sum of money to repair the fire pump and refurbishment of fire engine number 6, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $18,075 to repair the fire pump and refurbish engine 6 for the fire department.
We have a motion and a second. The Finance Committee approves. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 27, to see if the town will vote to transfer a sum of money from free cash to stabilization fund or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move to have the town vote to transfer $60,000 from free cash to the stabilization fund.
We have a motion and a second. The Finance Committee is favorable. Is there any discussion of this motion? The question on the floor is, what is stabilization fund?
Actually, the stabilization fund probably is the most important fund that we've appropriated money into tonight, because I have always thought of it in my mind as akin to an equity fund for the town. We have money in that fund. It is there for us to use if we need it in dire emergencies, but it plays a key role in our ability to borrow money. It's there. It's kind of like as an equity fund would be. So that's what I like it to. If it were our personal business, I'd call it my equity fund. And it's just a fund that's there. It represents the town's financial strength, which at this time we're very happy to say is improving. And so at some point we will reach a limit on that fund, but we're not quite there yet.
Any other questions or discussion? This requires a 2/3 vote. If the vote happens to be unanimous, then we won't have to count. But I'm not allowed to guess 2/3 on a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 28, to see if the town will vote to amend the code of the town of Barre zoning, Chapter 140, by inserting a new section, 140-11.2, adult marijuana and marijuana establishments, or take any other action relative thereto. A recommendation from the Finance Committee? What's that? The Finance Committee is not making a recommendation. Do I have a recommendation from the Planning Board?
Mr. Moderator, the Planning Board recommendation is favorable.
Is what?
Favorable.
It's favorable. Can I have the motion, please?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the code of the town of Barre zoning, Chapter 140, by inserting a new section, 140-11.2, adult marijuana and marijuana establishments, as it appears in the Finance Committee booklet as Appendix A. And also I'm adding to this an amendment to that.
Not yet.
All right.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Would you like to make an amendment to your motion?
I would like to make an amendment to the motion. We wish to amend the Chapter 140 section to delete all of Section DD that lists conditions for marijuana retailer social consumption, delete the existing section and change it to read, marijuana retailer social consumption is not allowed in the town of Barre.
Is there any discussion on the amendment to the motion? I'm going to take a vote on the amendment to the motion, and then we'll move back to the amended motion. All those in favor of the amendment? Aye. All opposed? The amendment carries. Now we're moving to the amended motion. Is there any discussion of the motion? No discussion. There we go. Yep.
Can you explain specifically what it is that you're looking to change in the zoning specifically?
Please.
This change, it's an addition to the bylaw for the zoning, and this is the overarching bylaw to manage all of the marijuana facilities, retail, cultivation, delivery, all of those are part of this bylaw.
Yeah, can you step over to the microphone, please?
Mr. Moderator, I'm just curious, if this particular motion should fail, what then is the status of the Article 13 passage? It seems to say if this doesn't pass, in other words, if you don't agree to an overarching a network or protective environment, then how can you have a retail sales establishment? Am I missing the point here?
The purpose of this article is to establish a set of regulations in the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw controls where you can do things and what you can do there and what permits are required. We could not have one of those. I'm being referred to the green sheet. Maybe there's an explanation there that will help you. Does anyone else want to add anything?
From what I understand, if we agree to this, then everything that we voted for to have the establishment in town there's not a single place in town with these zoning laws that you can have this establishment. So basically, we won the vote to have the recreational marijuana, but if you vote for this, there's not a single place in town that you can actually build it. So it's kind of their way of tricking you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Moderator, that's not correct. We can have these establishments in town, but they are restricted to certain locations.
Someone wants to ask a question? Don't shout them out. Step up to the microphone.
Can't we stick to the zoning laws we had prior to the marijuana on industrial and leave it at that instead of completely amending it specifically for marijuana?
The answer to that is no, we can't. The marijuana regulations that the state has adopted are very complex. They have lots of conditions in them. We've written this bylaw to help implement those conditions for any of these establishments in the town of Barre.
You'll have to come up if you have a question. You need to come up to the microphone if you want to ask a question.
Does this go beyond the state laws? Are there places in Barre? That gentleman said
Please,
there are,
please.
and you say there are.
Excuse me. Ask your question into the microphone. Do not direct your question to another person. Direct your question to me.
I'm sorry. Are there places in this town? One gentleman said there aren't, one said there are. And do his amendments or changes go beyond the state requirements? That's all I'm asking.
You can answer that question.
Yeah. The bylaw as written does not go beyond the state requirements, but remember, every bylaw that's revised or a new bylaw written has to go to the Attorney General for their review and approval prior to it being implemented. So this bylaw, if it's adopted, will have to go to the state to be reviewed.
Any other? Yes.
Mr. Moderator, I hope someone will correct me if I'm wrong. I understand that we approved we approved shops and delivery in our earlier votes. My belief is that this article says, okay, since we're going to have shops and we're going to have delivery, or at least we're open to it, we need to have a set of regulations as to how those businesses are allowed to operate. And my thinking is that this is the article that provides the framework for those regulations so that those shops can indeed function. Am I wrong about that, somebody?
The earlier votes were to not prohibit. We voted down prohibitions.
Correct.
Just to be clear what we voted on earlier. We voted down prohibitions earlier. Anyone want to respond? Dean, you can come over to the microphone. Okay, come on.
Mr. Moderator, just to clarify, there was a question as to whether the proposed bylaws were more, the way I interpreted it, more burdensome than the state regulations in place. I think the answer was no, but actually I just happened to open the page, and one of the proposed bylaws talks about restrictions and prohibitions. Now, in the state regulations, 935 CMR, the state has a buffer zone clause that requires that any marijuana establishment is located at least 500 feet from a K through 12 school. That's the state's reg on that. The proposed bylaws say that uses shall not be located within 500 feet of the following: a building containing another marijuana establishment, a public or private elementary school, middle school, which is in the state regs. But then it goes on to a public library, a playground or park, a youth center, a daycare, child facility, public swimming area or pool, residential dwellings or group homes, or structures used for religious purposes, which baffles me because I thought there was a separation there. So they just opening it up, I just happen to land there, and I think that does show that they are a little more burdensome than the state regs. Thank you.
Yes, Nicker.
Just so you have a clarification, where the rest of those all come from is actually from the alcohol regulations. So it's not that they pulled these things out of the ether and just added them to their regulations. The regulations that come from the state regarding where alcohol can be sold are that whole list. So the planning board did not just pull these other places out of nowhere.
In the back.
I think that the first gentleman that came up had a very valid question, and I would very much like to have somebody here answer his question. Thank you.
Which question?
Would you like to come up and repeat your question, please? You, with the beard.
I think he's declining. Go ahead.
If I recall the question appropriately, he was asking if this bylaw was intended to create the framework that the previous votes that did not prohibit. And yes, the answer is this is intended to create a framework in which the non-prohibited uses will be allowed. There are certain things that I do believe you will find that some contest to be excessive in its limitations of the framework. I do want to give a lot of respect to the planning board, though, respect to them, because they spent a lot of time working with public meetings, trying to develop this. We may disagree on a few items, but I definitely want to make sure that they're given a lot of credit for a lot of time and due effort and working really hard with the town to get to this point.
Any other discussion or questions? Yes. Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'll explain what we're voting on. Yeah. Are there any other questions about the content? Yeah.
As I understand the wording of this, there appears to be a moratorium shall be in effect through December 31st, 2019. How does one amend this to limit the moratorium?
Let me clarify that for you. So what we're voting on right now is an amendment to our zoning bylaw, Article 28.
Excuse me.
There are articles about moratoriums that will not be relevant if this passes.
Thank you.
Danica.
I think some of the confusion at the moment is that there is a moratorium that is in place that was voted in our last town meeting, that if these planning board recommendations are not followed, then at that point, my understanding is that we will revert back to the temporary moratorium that was voted in last year. Am I correct? Okay.
So for those who didn't follow that, I think what she said is if this does not pass, We already have a moratorium in place that goes to the end of the year. That will continue to be the case. Any other discussion on this question? Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up a few comments I may have actually about the bylaw itself. Just bring it to the attention so that when you are or are not deciding which way you want to vote, you may see a different perspective based on how they're written. One of the questions I start with is when you do go into the Section G, restrictions and prohibitions, number 1A speaks to the fact that a building containing another marijuana establishment, RMD, OMMD, or AMR, except for facilities that are owned or leased by the same operator, cannot be within 500 feet of each other. I kind of read that a little bit backwards. It starts with, you can't be within 500 feet, and then it goes A through J, and the first thing A is, 2 separate facilities owned by 2 different people can't be within 500 feet of each other. Now, the reason I think that might be overly restrictive is one person might actually have a cultivation and processing center, and right next to them they have a delivery center. Separate owners, one owns the trucks, one owns the building and produces the material that gets wholesaled to a retailer. So by limiting them from being next to each other, all you're doing is making it more costly to operate. So I don't understand why that fit into one of the exceptions. I'm sure there is another, I'm just raising a point from my perspective. It might be something we want to look at. Also, there was an exception. Oh, if you go to number 16 under that same general section, so that goes a couple more pages over, speaks to no more than 3 indoor marijuana facilities are allowed by special permit in the town of Barre. Because the definitions don't actually define an indoor marijuana facility, I'm just curious, did you mean to imply a cultivation facility? Or are you speaking of retail would fall into that same, so you could have no more than 3 licenses that are retail, testing, cultivation. If it's indoors, you can only have 3. So I had a question about that. Okay. Perfect.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear.
The answer I got was the intent was cultivation. And that falls in line with the next one right after it that actually speaks to no more than 3 outdoor marijuana facilities. So I'm assuming that also that meant cultivation. I'm only going through a couple of these just to bring it up, but if you go to 0, the planning board, O, planning board review process, number 2, the very last sentence, I have a little concern where the sentence says the planning board may waive or modify any condition as is determined in its sole discretion. That kind of makes it almost sound like that this whole bylaw is not necessary because they have the discretion to just change it when they want to, depending on the circumstance that's been presented in front of them. I think it's just a little bit too much leeway you give a board through a bylaw. So these are just some thoughts I just wanted to bring up so that you know what you're looking at and what you might be voting on.
Do you want to offer any amendments?
Sure. Okay, I would like to actually go back to, I think it is Section E, location, physical requirements, and allowed uses. Number 1. I would like to keep the whole section number 1 as written, but follow it up with indoor cultivation greenhouses are excluded from the interior areas, cannot be viewed from outside. If it's a greenhouse, it's very difficult to say you can prevent someone from seeing the product in the building.
If you want to make an amendment, you need to write it down.
Okay then. I'll be back in about a half hour.
Be alone.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Motion to table.
I have a motion and a second to table this item. Tabling, in this case, is really not all that different from voting against it. But that's the motion that was made. If you vote yes, we're not going to talk about this article anymore. Those in favor of tabling the amended Article 28, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed to tabling? No. Is table 2/3? 2/3? We're going to have a count. We still have our counters from before. All those in favor of tabling this, so we don't talk about it anymore, please stand up. Count. Everyone can sit down. All of those opposed to tabling this article, people who want to keep talking about this, please stand. You may sit. There's a point of order.
What is the impact on Article 15 retail? Are we going back to just...
That's not a point of order. So the motion to lay upon the table carries. This article is laid upon the table, and we're going to move on to the next article. Article 29. See if the town will vote to amend the code of the town of Barre zoning chapter 140 by inserting a new section 140-11.6 to read as follows. temporary moratorium on marijuana retail or marijuana social consumption establishment within the town of Barre is described by the state in the state of Massachusetts draft regulations, December 21st, 2017, 935 CMR 500, adult use of marijuana. During this temporary moratorium, no land or structure may be used for marijuana social consumption establishments. The moratorium shall be in effect through December 31st, 2019, or until such time as the town adopts the zoning bylaw amendments that regulate marijuana retail or marijuana social consumption, whichever occurs earlier. During the moratorium period, the town shall undertake a planning process to address the potential impacts of marijuana retail or marijuana social consumption, and to consider the Cannabis Control Commission regulations regarding such, and shall consider adopting new zoning bylaws in response to these issues, or take any other action relative thereto. Yeah, that is what the green sheet says. I'm going through the warrant. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion that the town vote to table this article, Article 29, because of the previous vote allowing or disallowing social consumption.
I have a motion and a second to table. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Excellent, it's unanimous. Article 30. To see if the town will vote to amend the code of the Town of Barre zoning, Chapter 140, by inserting a new section 140-11.7 to read as follows. Temporary moratorium on marijuana retail or delivery only within the town of Barre, as described in the state of Massachusetts draft regulations, December 21st, 2017, 935 CMR 500, adult use of marijuana. The moratorium shall be in effect through December 31st, 2019, or until such time as the town adopts zoning bylaw amendments that regulate marijuana retail or delivery, whichever occurs earlier. During the moratorium period, the town shall undertake the planning process to address the potential impacts of marijuana retail or delivery in town, and to consider the Cannabis Control Commission regulations regarding such, and shall consider adopting new zoning bylaws in response to these issues, or take any other action relative thereto. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the code of the Town of Barre zoning, Chapter 140, by inserting a new section, 140-11.7, to read as follows. Temporary moratorium on marijuana retailer delivery only within the Town of Barre as described in the state of Massachusetts draft regulations, December 21st, 2017, 935 CMR 500, adult use of marijuana. The moratorium shall be in effect through December 31st, 2019, or until such time as the town adopts zoning bylaw amendments that regulate marijuana retailer delivery, whichever occurs earlier. During the moratorium period, the town shall undertake a planning process to address the potential impacts of marijuana retailer delivery in town, and to consider the Cannabis Control Commission regulations regarding such, and shall consider adopting new zoning bylaws in response to these issues.
I have a motion and a second. It looks like the Finance Committee does not have an opinion on this issue. Is there any discussion of the motion? No? Yeah. Someone's quoting the green sheet. Any other discussion?
So I just want to be clear. We already voted to allow delivery in town, and a no vote would allow the state regulations to take over. So haven't we kind of already voted on this? Because we said yes to delivery within the town.
This is a moratorium.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a period of time. The state allows a town to say, we're not going to do anything while we have time to write some bylaws. We tried to write some bylaws that I guess didn't work out.
You know,
So
I think we've had plenty of time to write those laws, and I don't think we've done it.
At this time, the Cannabis Commission has not put out any regulations regarding home delivery. So until they have a chance to come up with regulations at the state level, it's really difficult, or as you can see from trying to create the current planning board regulations, it's really, really difficult in order to come up with regulations. So this is just an opportunity for the town to actually create planning for how and where they would be able to site someplace like this. And since we just tabled the last thing, it seems like we're obviously going to have another town meeting in order to approve some sort of planning regulations anyway. So it's not like it would take forever.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would just like to make a comment on the person who said we had plenty of time with the planning board. I have a stack of paper this tie on my counter on all the different revisions, the different modifications, everything we've done to try to help and work things in, work things out. So it's not something that you can just pull up in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. So we're voting on whether we're going to adopt a moratorium. All of those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. I'm going to need my counters. That's what it says. All those in favor, please stand. You're standing if you're in favor of an extended moratorium. Stand the whole time. Yes. Everyone be seated, please. All those opposed to an extended moratorium, please stand. You can say it, sorry. The yes votes were 53%. That's not enough to carry the motion, therefore the motion is defeated. Article 31, to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of the Town of Barre zoning, Chapter 140, by amending Section 140-10.1, solar energy facilities, special permit, and site plan review, or take any other action relative thereto. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, the planning board has developed a revision to the existing solar bylaw over the past several months.
That's discussion. I'm waiting for a motion.
All right. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to table the solar bylaw until such time as we have had an opportunity to discuss and consider the requested changes we've received.
I have a motion and a second to table. All those in favor of that motion? Aye. Opposed? No. Well, that's fun. Just a moment. Before we do the accounting, can all those in favor of tabling, please raise your hand. Okay, you can put your hands down. All those opposed to tabling, please raise your hands. There's 2/3. The motion to table carries. Article 32, to see if the town will vote pursuant to MGL Chapter 114, Section 34, to permit a certain parcel of land to be used as a cemetery. The land is owned by the Hardy Farm Trust and is located at 33 Hardy Road in Barre, Massachusetts. It is located within Assessor's Map C and parcel number 94. The cemetery would be private and would be used for family members and close friends. The area of the proposed cemetery parcel is 2,200 square feet and would have space for 20 grave plots. The site is shown on plans prepared by Trowbridge Engineering LLC, dated 25 October 2017, on file with the Board of Health, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town will vote pursuant to MGL Chapter 114, Section 34, to permit a certain parcel of land to be used as a cemetery. The land is owned by the Hardy Farm and is located at 33 Hardy Road in Barre, Massachusetts. It is located within the Assessor's Map C and parcel number 94. The cemetery would be private and would be used for family members. The area of the proposed cemetery parcel is 2,200 square feet and would have the space for 20 grave plots. The site is shown on plans prepared by Trowbridge Engineering LLC, dated October 25th, 2017, on file with the Board of Health.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, I'm wondering what the relationship of this plot is to underlying aquifers.
The question is, what is the relationship of the plot to underlying aquifers?
The parcel of land is very small and is located in the middle of the property. It is not located near any streams, ponds. Again, it is very small and it's not overwhelming.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Article 33, to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of the Town of Barre, Chapter 80, Peace and Good Order, by amending Chapter 80-4, quote, ball playing, throwing stones, by deleting the sentence and replacing it with, no person shall play ball or throw stones or other missile-like objects in or upon a public street, or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town will vote to amend the code of the town of Barre, Chapter 80, Peace and Good Order, by amending Chapter 80-4, which is ball playing, throwing stones, by deleting the sentence and replacing it with, "No person shall play ball or throw stones or other missile-like objects in or upon the public street." And Mr. Moderator, I made some copies.
Just a moment. We have a motion. We have a second. Now go ahead.
I made some copies of the old bylaw as it is. I have, if anybody should not know what the old bylaw is, what it's replacing, if I could, Mr. Moderator, just pass.
Why don't you just hand me a copy? I'll read it.
Okay.
The existing bylaw reads, "No person shall play at ball or fly any kite or balloon or throw stones or other missiles in or upon any public street in the center village of the town." That's what it currently says. Is there any?
I'm scared.
Yes, there's a question.
Excuse me.
My question is, so are you saying, is this saying that if we vote for this, if a kid has a basketball net out in front of his house and they're playing and they're throwing the ball in the basketball net, that there going to be an arrest or a fine for the parent? Is that what we're voting on? Seriously?
Please direct any questions to the moderator and don't answer the questions directly from the audience.
So,
does anybody want to
I have a
respond
follow-up.
to the question that was just asked?
So,
Go ahead.
so if my child is playing in the road, I'm going to get a fine with her ball?
Can the police chief answer that question?
The answer is it'd be illegal to dribble a basketball down your road, kick a soccer ball across the road to your neighbor's house, play basketball on the edge of your property, toss a stone into the woods if you're walking along the road. So if that's what you want us to start arresting people for.
Sam?
I'm coming to the support of Mary Jane here, and I understand what the police, the chief just said, and he's being not ridiculous. He's being very logical. I think that this ruling that we're asking for is maybe worded not as well as it could have been, but if you listen to the issues that this young lady has been dealing with for years, you maybe might come to her support and say, we don't like what's happening to you, Mary Jane, and we want to try to address some of the issues along with the police department, because this has come before the group previously. And it was poo-pooed, it was disregarded, and so was Mary Jane disregarded because she has difficulties. Now, when she tells me that the children in and around her area engrave names on her car, and the police department maybe doesn't know about her or doesn't hear about her, but I think we need to join with one of our townspeople and make her life a little bit more palatable in her area, along with the police department. Thank you.
Watch your step there, Sam. Please don't yell from the audience. Somebody have, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Sam. I live in a small area in South Barre, not in Barre. I don't live on a farm. I don't live where there's a lot of space where you can throw balls, play basketball. You don't hear the echoing inside your home, in your windows. You don't have that thumping noise that you have when you are playing basketball. I have it inside my home. At 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, whenever people shall decide. If there's 6 people outside, children, 6 balls, you have the 6 balls bouncing at different times. You have adults that are outside playing, and they are mixing it up with liquor, and they are mixing it up with marijuana in the street, sharing cigarettes, and we have craziness down there. When you play basketball, because in between the basketball bouncing 15 times and then hitting up against the square to try to get the basketball into the hoop, you have the B word. They like the B word so much that when they get all hyped up, it's etched in my car. It's carved into my car. I have to pay for it with my pension check. I've had 5 slashed tires. I've had a car window broken. I do not want rocks being thrown on this street that has absentee landlords now. It used to be homeowners, and they live there. These people that are down there now are tenants. They come and they go. Now, the landlords don't perhaps know this. I asked them, I said, please, the way you have the basketball hoop.
I have a point of order, just a moment. What's the point of order? Okay, thank you. I'm going to give the speaker some leeway, but try and stay on the topic of the specific words of the bylaw which have to do with throwing things.
I've had a broken car window because of throwing things. I've had lost sleep. I've had, with the thumping, it's this thumping echoing that's coming into my windows, into my doors. And they say, there's nothing you can do about it. There's no bylaw. Get a bylaw. I've had those scooters that are inside the street where the children play. They don't just use the scooter correctly. They have it and they swing it over their heads and they let it go. This is like maybe 8 apartments. They have 3 apartments to it, 8 homes, 3 apartments to it, 2 apartments to it, and you have these are rentals. There's a lot of people in a small area, and they decided that they're going to put the hoop on the curbing in a clever way to pass the law that, oh, it's on my property, and it's bounced inside the road. Say my home is here, this is the road, and this is the basketball hoop. You're bouncing it 30 feet from my home. In order to escape, you can't use your yard. In order to escape it, you have to go in your car and leave or go in your home. If you call 911 to ask for some help, there's no bylaw, sorry. And actually, I had one officer come down, he took off his cap, he put it inside the car, and he joined them. He joined the basketball people playing. Now, there's no need to be afraid of these people. Leadership would be, look, have some consideration, have some respect. There's a lady down there that owns her property. Do not throw balls on her car. Do not ruin her flowers. Do not ruin her property. It costs her money. It's unfair, and I want to have South Barre, Barre Plains included in the bylaw that is there for Barre. You don't have problems in Barre like that because you have a bylaw. It's understood. If you pass the bylaw, include South Barre, Barre Plains, all the officer has to do is come down one time and say, you can't play ball on the street.
Thank you. No, please stop yelling out from the audience.
We have had this discussion before at a meeting, and I expressed my opinion before, and I'll do it again. This is an antiquated bylaw. It restricts kite flying, and this was intended back in the day because it was a center of common to keep, the common, not with children, I guess. Points of it are probably illegal, as the chief has said before, in themselves and not enforceable. I think applying an antiquated bylaw to the entire town is ridiculous. And I would sooner see the bylaw stricken than reinforced somewhere else. I don't doubt that she has issues with some of her neighbors. This is not addressing those issues specifically. This is going after every kid in town that plays ball anywhere in town. And I think it's wrong, and I don't think should be entertained.
We're going to let somebody else speak. Does anyone who hasn't spoken yet have something that they want to say? Okay, please keep your comments short.
I will, Mr. Moderator, thank you. This bylaw that has been rewritten says going to delete the word kites because we didn't like it last time. We're going to delete the word balloons. We didn't like it last time. They were antiquated, old languages, and it was too restrictive. It won't be restricted. Everybody will be included. Only if you want to call and you have a problem. You're not going to have a problem like I have in my area. You're not going to be bothering the police, which taxpayers pay for anyway. Every day, every hour, 5,000 people are not going to be calling. Just this area, if you could just straighten it out so there'll be some respect and some consideration, some cooperation, and I can live. It's unfair.
Sam?
For everybody's information, I'd like to know, how long has this young lady been living in this location where she considers it her home? And for instance, the young lady that came up and mentioned whether it's going to be against the law for her children to play ball, that's ridiculous also. There just needs to be some sort of a modicum of respect for people who live here, who have their home here. And I think the police need to participate in this some way or shape so that this young lady could live out her life in her own home where her name doesn't get engraved on her car because the kids are, pissed off at her. Thank you.
Man in the ball cap. You want to move the question? There is, I believe, I can't quite hear, you're trying to move the question, right? There's a motion and a second to move the question. Move the question is a 2/3 vote. If you say yes to this, then we're going to stop the discussion and then we'll be able to move on to have a vote on the item, okay? So, all those in favor of moving the question, say aye. All those opposed? Excellent. It's unanimous. We're going to move the question. Now we're going to ask the question on the motion. Everyone knows what the motion was, right?
Perhaps we can clear it up.
No, we can't have any more discussion. I'm sorry.
No. Clear the motion up so we know what it is.
The motion was read. Does anybody not know what the motion was? It was to amend the bylaw, strike this old sentence, and write a new sentence. That's what we're voting on. It says 2/3 vote here, but that's not true. This is a regular bylaw. This is just a majority vote. I'm sorry, we can't have any more discussion on the item unless you have a point of order.
The motion does not include what the old bylaw was and how it was going to be changed. This is the sentence that's going to be changed from. That's why there was the selectmen said, we include the words balloon and kites.
So as a point of order, if you're asking me to clarify what the motion was, I'm happy to do that. It is to strike the sentence that says, no person shall play ball or fly any kite or balloon or throw stones or other missiles in or upon any public street in the center village of the town, and instead say, no person shall play ball or throw stones or other missile-like objects in or upon any public street. That's what we're voting on.
Exactly, thank you.
All those in favor of that, making that change? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? No. The motion is defeated. Article 34. to see if the town will vote to amend its zoning bylaw, Chapter 140 of the Town Code, by adding section 11.1 entitled Temporary Moratorium on Recreational Marijuana Establishments, a new subsection D as follows. D, exception. Notwithstanding any provision of this zoning bylaw to the contrary, nothing herein shall be deemed to prohibit, require a special permit or site plan approval for or otherwise regulate, nor shall the foregoing moratorium apply to the development or operation of a marijuana establishment as defined by MGL C 94G Section 1, which shall be permitted by right if the following prerequisites are satisfied. Said marijuana establishment is situated in the industrial district. Said marijuana establishment is not located within 500 feet of a pre-existing public or private school providing education in kindergarten or any of the grades 1 through 12. And prior to the date of adoption hereof, the owner and/or operator of said marijuana establishment has applied for and received a provisional certificate of registration for a registered marijuana dispensary or take any other action relative thereto. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend its zoning bylaw, aka Chapter 140 of the Town Code, by adding to Section 11.1 entitled, quote, Temporary Moratorium on Recreational Marijuana Establishments, end quote, new subsection D as follows. D, exception. Notwithstanding any provision of this zoning bylaw or any general bylaw to the contrary, nothing therein shall be deemed to prohibit, require a special permit or site plan approval for, or otherwise regulate, nor shall they apply to the development or operation of a marijuana establishment as defined by MGL-C 94G Section 1, which shall be permitted by right if the following prerequisites are satisfied. Said marijuana establishment is situated in the industrial district. Said marijuana establishment is not located within 500 feet of a pre-existing public or private school providing education in kindergarten or any of grades 1 through 12, and prior to the date of adoption hereof, the owner and/or operator of said marijuana establishment has applied for and received a provisional certificate of registration for a registered marijuana dispensary or take any other action relative thereto.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Finance Committee has no opinion. Can you step up to the microphone because it says no recommendation.
We have voted 6-0 to be favorable on this Article 34.
Is there any discussion? Yes.
Mr. Moderator, I move for secret ballot.
There is a motion and a second that when we finish our discussion, that we will do this by secret ballot. So we're going to have a vote on that. All those in favor of having a secret ballot, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to a secret ballot?
No.
Let me ask town council something. Can I make that judgment call? Yeah, that's good. All those in favor of a paper ballot, please stand. Everyone in favor of a paper ballot, please stand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 16, 17. You can sit down. Everyone opposed to a secret ballot, please stand. Yeah, we're having a secret ballot. Okay, you can sit down. Not yet, though, not we're not having a secret ballot yet. We're going to have a discussion of this motion. So, any questions on the motion? Any discussion? That was 10%. That was well over 10%. Kathy?
What is the purpose of this citizen petition?
Dean, can you explain the purpose of this petition?
Kathy, that's a really good question. So, as many of you know, we've been discussing this project with the town for over a year. When we went into the discussions with the selectmen and subsequently other boards, it was very clear that the project was going to be located on an industrial parcel of land, which currently in our zoning bylaws, this project would be allowed as of right. It's cultivation and product manufacturing. Just to clarify, our proposal never included a commercial storefront dispensary. It's always been about cultivation and manufacturing of products to be shipped elsewhere, and that hasn't changed. So in good faith, we've had this discussion for a year and a half, and we had the discussion based on our clear understanding that in the industrial zone, currently, our right is to create a cultivation manufacturing facility. This is new uncharted territory, and it's been a heck of a meeting. Welcome that to the chairmanship. It's new, and Catherine and I were well aware that the planning board had a big task in front of them, and they were looking at the overall bylaws for the town, and they've spent a lot of time, and they're moving in the right direction. In the meantime, we've received all of our permits from the state of Massachusetts. We've successfully negotiated with the town not once but twice. So our reasoning for submitting this is that at this point here, we strictly don't want to see those as of rights that we currently have taken away or altered. As it turns out, because the planning board's proposed bylaws have been tabled, that the moratorium still stays in place. This article does not lift the moratorium. It's strictly specific to an industrial parcel of land, 500 feet back, which complies with the state regulations for a buffer zone. And there's an added buffer in here that the applicant, by tonight, must have received a provisional certificate of registration from the Department of Public Health to operate. So we just would like to get moving. If you pass this bylaw, it allows us to.
Yep.
So it doesn't change that the moratorium is still at the end of this year, 2018. You have all of your requirements met, but you want to begin sooner than December 2018. Is that your purpose?
The question is whether the intent is to start right away and not have to wait for the current moratorium to expire.
Well, that's part of it. That's business. That's part of it. We have been talking about this for a year and a half, so we would like to start moving forward. But at the same time, Catherine and I have had this debate. At this point here, personally, I don't believe we're talking about marijuana anymore. I really truly believe that this petition is about property rights. It's about having rights to do something on your property according to town zoning and preventing those rights from being taken away. I mean, imagine Mr. Yaglu, who has the horses up on the farm, and he's had these horses for many years. And if suddenly there was a proposal to, well, we're not going to ban horses, but now you can't just have them by right. You have to go and satisfy, in its current version, many, many, many different expensive requirements.
Are you done speaking, Dean?
Apparently.
So are you afraid that the planning board, between now and the end of December, I'm assuming they're going to rewrite the regulations, get back to a special town meeting before December 31st, since it's now December 31st where we have the moratorium. Are you concerned that they are going to change it? That's part A. And then part B, if he gets this particular citizen's petition, it has to go before the
So the questions were, is Dean concerned that the planning board is going to manage to get a zoning bylaw through its special town meeting in October? And is Dean aware that it takes the Attorney General a long time to decide whether these bylaws are even okay?
I'm not afraid of, there's no fear in any of this. The planning board will continue to work towards workable bylaws. I'm aware of how the process works with the Attorney General, and it will take 60 to 90 days, but we expect that. But once again, this issue isn't about anything other than maintaining property rights to do in an industrial zone what we can currently do right now. Now, with the current moratorium, we still can't do it. And we'll have to wait until December, and who knows, I can't predict the future, Kathy. So December's a long way off.
This property only, and it was not gonna set a precedent or a precedent for any other properties, am I correct?
It's not about a particular piece of property. It's about exempting from the moratorium
Right.
properties in the industrial zone that meet a variety of qualifications. Who meets those qualifications? I don't know.
Dean, could you help me?
Please, Dean, if you have a comment.
But that's for just your property, but someone else can't come up and, you're not gonna set a precedent, is what I'm saying, for other people.
Perhaps someone could tell us if there are any other people or organizations in town that have received a provisional certificate of registration for a registered marijuana dispensary. Could one of the selectmen tell us if that's the case?
Just to clarify, the process to go before the state and actually get a provisional certificate of registration requires a community host agreement, and only one owner of a property in town has come before the Board of Selectmen to gather that, so only one owner of a parcel would meet all the criteria in this particular one.
A friend.
That's, you cannot meet all of this criteria without coming before the Board of Selectmen and executing a community host agreement. We've only done that with one.
I need you, if you're going to ask a question, you need to come to the microphone.
Just perhaps a clarification. It says if it meets these certain conditions, and one of the conditions is prior to the date of adoption hereof.